And energy and resources has been a theme consistently for Alliance 21, certainly across the four conferences that I've attended. It's been a consistent issue. Now, Australia, of course, has been for many years a significant supplier of resources and energy into the region, particularly iron ore and coal. And as the ambassador mentioned earlier, we're now going to see an absolutely dramatic step up in that activity in relation to LNG. Many people just don't have a feel for the scale of what is about to happen over the next 18 months. I mean, $180 billion worth of investment is going to be occurring. And that's going to take Australia from where we are now pretty close to being the largest exporter of LNG in the world, probably overtaking Qatar in the next 2 or 3 years. And this is a dramatic change. And in addition to that, there's an equivalent dollar value investments potentially in the pipeline to continue to grow. And there's some challenges associated with that, and we'll get into some of those challenges shortly. But there's also a global revolution going on in the energy sector. You only have to look at how quickly things have changed to realise and how quickly things might change in the future, and realise that anybody's forecasts are purely speculation because things have changed dramatically. A couple of brief examples. The switch in the US from being potentially an importer of LNG to being a major exporter of LNG. The events of February 2011, when Japan went from being a significant user of nuclear energy for its power to now being an absolutely major importer of natural gas, and now, of course, shifting to some extent towards coal, as are other countries grappling with these issues. In China, the impact of air pollution in their cities and how they are responding to that in relation to their energy supply. And in Australia, one of the most significant issues, not only in relation to the export of gas, but also because for a whole range of reasons, Australians are using less energy. For the first time in our history, we've seen electricity demand drop consistently over the last 5 or 6 years. Never happened before. And that's causing a lot of significant change. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of change happening, and this morning we've got three experts with very diverse backgrounds to talk to you a little bit about the way they see their perspective, and hopefully to engage in some conversation with each other and also with you, the audience. Initially, we'll get Roy Krzywosinski from Chevron, and I'll introduce him in a minute to talk about the perspective of Chevron and the way they're approaching these issues. And then we've got Ian Kemish from ExxonMobil and Martin Ferguson, who many of you would be aware has previously been a minister in the Australian government, but also now has some serious roles in relation to the energy sector, but very different backgrounds. The idea is to have a presentation from Roy, some comments and short presentations from both Ian and Martin, and then to have a conversation and hopefully a dialogue with you in the audience. So let me now turn to introducing the first of our speakers. Roy Krzywosinski joined Chevron in 1981. Now that's 1981. That is a long period for someone working in any corporation, and that means that he has clearly been extraordinarily successful in managing his way through what is one of the significant energy players in the world. He's currently Managing Director of Chevron Australia and Head of the Australasia Business Unit, located in Perth. Australia has been very fortunate in having Chevron as one of its partners in relation to developing those resources, and of course the Gorgon project, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is one of the most significant projects that we've seen and builds off the back of exports from Western Australia into the region since the very late 1980s. Roy has had given that background, has had a very large range of activities in Chevron, and in fact he joined Chevron very shortly, about the same time as he graduated from Michigan Technical University. So please join me in welcoming Roy Krzywosinski.
Thank you, Tony, and for that kind of introduction, and thank you for reminding me that I'm old. I'm actually halfway there to being a hydrocarbon myself, right? It's another way of saying I'm a dinosaur, huh? Anyway, thank you. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge the Center's Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Bates Gill, as well as U.S. Ambassador to Australia, John Barry, and other any other ambassadors who may be present today, parliamentarians and former parliamentarians. I welcome everyone. And let me say just how pleased Chevron is to be sponsoring and participating in the Alliance 21 project. The Alliance 21 project is making a worthwhile contribution to reinforcing the shared values and interests and mutual benefits of the 60-year-old relationship between Australia and the United States, and in understanding the opportunities that are in front of us facing the alliance in the 21st century. And it's great to be here in Canberra today at the United States Studies Center's landmark Alliance 21 conference. And it's quite timely, I might say. It's on the back of Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott's visit to the States. And he just returned here just a few days ago. And it's fair to say that the U.S.-Australian alliance in an emerging Asia was perhaps the key theme of their discussions. As Prime Minister Abbott did say in Washington, we are more than allies, we're family. There are no countries with a stronger community of interest and values. Also, the Prime Minister's visit to Houston, and in particular the announcement of the Consulate General position in Houston, was certainly welcomed, as it demonstrates the importance of energy security to the U.S.-Australia partnership. And the importance of this partnership and the relationship with Asia cannot be overstated. As for Chevron, and I don't want to make this a commercial, but I'm just trying to put some of this into context. But as for Chevron, we operate in 9 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. We're also Australia's largest international investor and the leading international energy company in the region. As such, we have a keen interest in a strong alliance, one that fosters a stable, prosperous, and integrated region. Like the Australia-United States alliance, Chevron also shares a 60-year relationship with Australia. We have been producing energy here for the last 6 decades. Across the Asia-Pacific region, Chevron is also in a fortunate position to be the largest energy producer in places like Thailand, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. And for the past 30 years, we've been a reliable and secure natural gas supplier to multiple markets through our 1/6 share in Australia's largest producing energy project, and that would be the Northwest Shelf Venture. In addition to that, we are making significant investment in exploration activities off the northwest coast of Australia, where we've had some exploration success, with more than 20 new discoveries announced since 2009. We're expanding this position even further by leading the investment of more than $80 billion in both the Gorgon and the Wheatstone LNG projects, which are currently under construction in Western Australia. And as Tony alluded to, that as Gorgon and Wheatstone gas come on stream and other major Australian projects starting to produce, Australia is set to become the largest LNG exporter in the world. This will represent a step change in Australia's economic integration with Asia. And if I were to break this down, and perhaps maybe I'll talk a little bit about global demand. So as we look at global demand in the years ahead, we will need, and I must emphasize this, we will need all forms of affordable energy, all forms, not just natural gas, but all forms of affordable energy. And this is to fuel the increased demand that we're forecasting across the region as the world economy continues to grow and as living standards continue to improve. Natural gas will play an integral role in the world's future energy mix and will be fundamental to delivering sufficient supply to meet the growing demand for energy. And not only is natural gas clean, but it's also plentiful. It's affordable and transportable. And gas is central to Asia's growing energy demand. This growth in demand is underpinned by Asia's increasing middle class that is expected to grow from 600 million people to 3 billion people by 2040. In addition, and Tony mentioned this also, that Japan's evolving shift from nuclear energy could see their gas supply making up to nearly 50% of their energy needs over the coming decades. To put it simply, the supply of gas from Australia to the Asian markets will play a vital role in keeping the lights on in homes and businesses for decades to come. Now, with respect to global competition, much is being said, much is being written about the changing nature of the global energy market. And it's largely based on the emergence of the US and Canada, or North America, as potential net energy exporters underpinned by vast and now economic onshore gas. And again, as Tony mentioned, recall as little as 10 years ago, and I recall very clearly, where the US was going to be a net energy importer. And construction of LNG receiving terminals were underway. And I remember when we were building an LNG receiving terminal. Now, those same terminals are now being permitted for LNG exports due to the natural gas revolution that is occurring in North America. This has all happened in the short span of 10 years. Essentially, the global dynamic has shifted, as we also see the emergence of other low-cost LNG suppliers gain momentum. Economic growth across the Asia-Pacific region is driving a rise in global LNG demand, which is expected to almost double by 2025. Now, there's different forecasts out there, and they're all quite bullish on the LNG market. I think by any measure and by any forecast that you look at, there is significant LNG demand on the horizon. So if forward-looking demand projections are compared to the amount of LNG supplies either producing today or perhaps under construction, there's a potential supply shortfall, and this can be debated whether it's 100 million tons of LNG by 2025 or whether it's 150 or 125. I think the message here, it's a big number. Now, if you were to assume it's 100 million ton per annum shortage by 2025, that would be the equivalent to almost 7 Australian Gorgon projects. Think about that. 7 Australian Gorgon projects. This means a substantial number of new greenfield LNG projects will need to be constructed to supplement the emerging wave of US and North American brownfield projects. And the good news here is Australia is ideally placed to meet this supply shortfall with its quality of natural gas resources, the geographic proximity to markets, the strong partnerships that we enjoy with customers, and the support of governments that we work with. However, Australia does face increasing global LNG competition, and this is coming from the US and from Canada. It's also coming from East Africa and even PNG. So there's a lot of people out there that are trying to play for that market gap, if you will. So the question is, who's going to be the first one to actually deliver? Even Russia has made a significant supply move with its recent deal with China, which could be equivalent to more than 2 Gorgons. So the message here is that Australia needs and must be proactive if we are to capture the projected supply shortfall opportunities. And it is important that Australia maintains high safety and environmental stewardship, policies that encourage investment, exploration, resource development, and trade. Furthermore, energy security and reliability of supply will be a key strategic element in the U.S., Australia, Asia relationship. The security of trade routes and the freedom of navigation are in all our interests. It is essential for trade and underpins a safe, reliable, and predictable movement of Australian LNG to our Asian customers. Importantly, many of our customers hold equity stakes in our Australian LNG projects, which strengthen their economic and political ties to Australia. The security cooperation between the United States, Australia, and other countries in the region is the cornerstone of regional security. And as the Prime Minister observed during his recent meeting with President Obama, the rebalancing of U.S. foreign policy in the Asia-Pacific region recognizes the USA's future USA's future is closely linked to the region, as is Australia's future. Further strengthening our economic and technological links with the region are the extensive Gorgon and Wheatstone project work scopes that are being completed in countries across the region. Our supply chain reaches deep into South Korea, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and Japan, just to name a few countries. In fact, developing and applying new technology goes hand in hand with building new energy projects to sustain economic growth. And a good example might be the Gorgon carbon dioxide injection project, which is a compelling example of applying new technology. Gorgon will be one of the world's most greenhouse gas efficient projects on the planet. And the CO2 injection project that is part of that scope is 4 times larger than any other project of its kind across the globe. It's also a compelling demonstration of the shared technological and environmental goals of the U.S. and Australia. The project will provide many lessons learned that will be applied in the region as well as around the world. This project exemplifies our shared values for safety and world-class environmental stewardship, which is vital to the continued development of energy resources. Now, perhaps maybe on a lighter note, last night, my Business Council of Australia colleagues and I met with the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and this morning we met with the Opposition Shadow Cabinet. We reiterated our support for the federal government's reform agenda and stressed the need for reforms that will enhance Australia's competitiveness, including improving productivity through flexible and adaptable workplace practices, reinvigorating free trade agreements, and promoting stable and predictable fiscal settings. The recent free trade agreements with Korea and Japan and the related discussions with China are also very much welcomed. Chevron applauds the U.S. and Australia's efforts to promote free trade, and we see this as an essential to underpin future energy investment in the region. We look forward to the implementation of a Trans-Pacific partnership with a strong investment chapter and dispute resolution provisions. These are all important factors in Australia maintaining its international competitiveness, as well as its position as an energy supplier of choice in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly have some amazing opportunities in front of us that will deepen our alliance in an emerging Asia. There's no doubt about that. I look forward to our discussion today and look forward to the outcomes of the Asia 21 project on how we can strengthen the U.S.-Australia alliance and meet the challenges ahead for the 21st century. For our part, we greatly appreciate the strong support we receive from government, and that's from both sides of the aisle. We continue to play a key role in finding, developing, and providing safe, reliable, affordable energy supplies, thus further integrating the Australian, U.S., and Asian economies, and supporting greater energy security in the Asia-Pacific region. I thank you very much for your time.